For over 70 years, one family has ruled North Korea like gods. But this obsession with control didn't appear out of nowhere. It began in an ancient land divided by rival kings. It was forged by brutal invaders, and it was accidentally created by a line drawn on a map. Today, North Korean families must collect 1 ton of human poop every year. Yes, poop! And people actually fight over it. Every story begins somewhere, but for North Korea's story, we have to rewind all the way back to 57 BC. Before North Korea was North Korea, this land was a battlefield for over 2,000 years. So how did centuries of warfare and isolation plant the seed for the world's most extreme dictatorship? Let's start at the beginning. In 57 BC, Korea wasn't one country, it was 3 separate kingdoms constantly at war with one another: Goguryeo, Baekje, and Silla. Imagine 3 brothers fighting over the same bedroom for 700 years. That's basically what happened.
This land is mine!
Not if I take it first!
You'll both have to go through me!
And they did go through each other for centuries. Fighting was fierce. Whoever was in charge demanded absolute loyalty from their people. You probably should, because if you didn't obey, you'd probably end up dead. Eventually, in 668 AD, Silla won and unified Korea. Great news, right? Not really, because Korea immediately learned a harsh lesson. A bigger country called China was watching. China was massive, powerful, and right next door. Korean kings quickly realized that if they wanted to survive, they had to bow to Chinese emperors and pay tribute. Basically, Korea became really good at saying, "Yes, sir," while staying independent on the inside. Fast forward to 1392, a new dynasty takes power called Joseon, and it would last over 500 years. In 1882, Korea became known as the Hermit Kingdom because it deliberately cut itself off from the outside world. If we stay quiet, bow low, and pay tribute to China, maybe everyone will just leave us alone?
And if they don't?
Then we bow lower. This strategy actually worked for centuries, but Korea's neighbors wouldn't leave it alone. Japan invaded in the 1590s and devastated the country. Later, China, Japan, and Russia all wanted influence over Korea. Korea's solution was to pay them against each other. Bow to whoever was strongest. Do whatever it takes to survive. By 1910, Korea had spent 2,000 years learning some brutal lessons. Absolute loyalty to the leader equals survival. Strict hierarchy keeps order. Isolation protects from dangerous outside ideas. And most importantly, control your people completely or someone else will. In 1910, Korea disappeared from the map completely for 35 years. So how did this brutal occupation create the perfect conditions for Kim Il-sung to become a god? Well, Japan officially annexed Korea in 1910, which meant for the next 35 years, Korea didn't exist as a country. The Japanese occupation was brutal. Forced labor, comfort women used as sex slaves, and Japan tried to erase Korean culture completely. Koreans were forced to take Japanese names, speak Japanese, and even worship the Japanese emperor. If you spoke Korean in public, you could be arrested. Japan was literally trying to make people forget they were Korean. A young boy named Kim Il-sung watched all of this happen. He joined the resistance and fought the Japanese as a guerrilla fighter. And while he was fighting, Kim was learning something important. He saw exactly how Japan controlled millions of people. A personality cult around the emperor, rewriting history, eliminating anyone who disagreed, making people forget who they were. Kim studied this blueprint very carefully. He just needed an opportunity to use it. That opportunity came in August 1945 when World War II ended and Japan surrendered. Korea was finally free. But you can't surrender unless you have someone to surrender to. So, the Americans and Soviets accepted Japan's surrender and drew a line right across Korea at the 38th parallel.
We'll take the south, you take the north. Sure. Just temporary though, right? A few months, then we hold elections. Yeah, totally temporary.
It was not temporary. The Soviets installed Kim Il-sung as their guy in the north. The Americans backed a man named Syngman Rhee in the south. The plan was to hold free elections and reunify Korea. But both Kim and Rhee realized that if there were free elections, they might lose, and losing meant losing power. So the temporary line stayed for 1 year, then 2 years, then 5 years. By 1950, there weren't just 2 zones anymore. There were 2 separate countries with 2 separate armies, and they absolutely hated each other. Kim Il-sung had his territory, Soviet backing, and the blueprint for total control he'd learned from Japan. Now, he just needed to conquer the South and rule all of Korea. How hard could it be? In early 1950, Kim decided to travel to Moscow to meet with Stalin. And he had a cunning plan. "Stalin, let me invade the South. I'll win in 3 weeks."
3 weeks? What about the Americans?
"They won't fight for Korea. They don't care."
You sure about that?
"Oh yeah, positive. It'll be easy peasy." Spoiler alert, it wasn't as easy as he thought. On June 25th, 1950, North Korea invaded, and at first, Kim looked like a genius. North Korean forces rolled south with Soviet tanks. Seoul fell in 3 days. The South Korean army scattered. By August, UN and South Korean forces were squeezed into a tiny corner around Busan. One more push, and Kim would win everything. Then things changed. On September 15th, the American general, General MacArthur, landed troops behind enemy lines in Incheon. It was risky, but it worked. The North Koreans panicked. Within 2 weeks, Seoul was retaken. By October, UN forces were deep inside North Korea. Kim's easy-peasy war had become a disaster. North Korea was hours from total defeat. Then, China showed up. In late October, hundreds of thousands of Chinese troops poured across the border. They called themselves volunteers, which fooled nobody.
Are those Chinese troops?
No, just 300,000 volunteers.
That's an army.
Volunteer army, totally different. The war ground to a brutal stalemate right back at the 38th parallel. For 2 more years, armies fought over the same frozen hills. Finally, on July 27, 1953, they signed an armistice. Not a peace treaty, just an agreement to stop shooting. The final toll was really bad. Over 3 million people died. Entire cities flattened, and after all that blood, the border ended up exactly where it had started in 1945. Kim's 3-week war lasted 3 years and accomplished nothing except making the division permanent. But lucky for him, after losing the war he'd started, Kim Il-sung didn't get overthrown. Instead, he did something that had never been done before. He made himself a god. Kim Il-sung had just led his country into a war that killed millions. So how did he survive and rule for 46 more years as an immortal god? Simple. He eliminated everyone who might challenge him. After the war, people who questioned Kim started disappearing. Pro-Soviet politicians? Gone by 1956. Pro-China politicians? Purged in 1958. By 1960, Kim stood alone with no rivals left. Maybe we should discuss... Discuss what? I think you might be wrong about... There's been another accident! But he didn't just want power. He wanted worship. So in the 1960s, his son, Kim Jong-il, took over propaganda, and together they rewrote history. The new story claimed Kim was born on a sacred mountain with a double rainbow and singing swallows. Total lies, but questioning it meant death. They reset the calendar, so year 1 became the year Kim was born. Giant statues appeared everywhere. Every home required his portrait, and people had to bow to it every morning. If your house caught fire, you had to save Kim's portrait first, even if you died. Then they did something truly insane. They started erasing language itself. The word I was removed from the language, which meant you couldn't say I love water, only we love water. People were taught they were the Kim Il-sung race, not Korean or Asian. The North Korean language had no words for love, freedom, human rights, or stress because those things didn't exist in their paradise. Every home got a radio that couldn't be turned off, permanently stuck on the propaganda channel. Kids learned that birds and mice can hear you, which meant surveillance was everywhere. And if you committed a crime, your kids, parents, and grandkids all went to prison camps too. 3 generations punished for one person's mistake. In 1974, Kim named his son, Kim Jong-il, as successor. This shocked communists everywhere because hereditary rule was the opposite of communism. But who would stop a god? In 1991, the Soviet Union collapsed and all aid stopped. This was bad. Kim Il-sung died in 1994 after 46 years in power. When his son, Kim Jong-il, took over, he inherited his father's perfect control system. But everything was about to collapse. So how did North Korea and the new regime get even worse? When the Soviets stopped sending aid, the economy fell apart. The Soviets aren't sending food anymore.
So?
So, people need to eat?
The North Koreans are resourceful people. They can make soup from old boots.
No electricity meant no fertilizer, which meant no food. And if that wasn't bad enough, in 1995 and 1996, floods destroyed the farmland. The government stayed silent while people starved. The survival stories are horrific. People ate grasshoppers, tree bark, and rats just to survive. Dead bodies appeared on the streets daily. Some people even resorted to cannibalism, selling human meat in markets as pork. Some estimates show between 2 million and 3.5 million people died, and the average North Korean is now 3 to 4 inches shorter than South Koreans because of years without enough food. Kim Jong-il's response to this was,
We can't let the world know our weak points.
He learned a crucial lesson from the famine. If you can't feed people, at least make the world too scared to invade. So in 2006, North Korea tested its first nuclear bomb, which became the regime's ultimate insurance policy. In 2011, Kim Jong-il died. His son, Kim Jong-un, took over at just 27 years old, and experts predicted he'd fail. They were completely wrong. Kim Jong-un proved even more ruthless than his father. He executed his own uncle, Chang Song-taek, and apparently killed his half-brother, Kim Jong-nam, with nerve agent. He accelerated the nuclear program, and in 2017, the world genuinely worried about nuclear war. But here's what life is actually like in North Korea today. Every family must collect 1 ton of human poop yearly for fertilizer. And people lock their outhouses so neighbors don't steal it. There are no trash cans because nothing ever gets thrown away. The average wage is $2 per month. Wowzers! And I thought animated stickmen were badly paid. That wouldn't even cover my train fare. Speaking of which, in North Korea, sometimes people have to get out and push the trains because there's no electricity. The regime has forced labor camps where people work in terrible conditions. Women who escape to China often get trapped and can't come home. Right now, hundreds of thousands of North Korean women are stuck there. People can be executed for the smallest of things. Letting dust collect on Kim's portrait, not crying enough when a leader dies, watching a movie from another country. These tiny crimes can get you killed. In 2014, the United Nations studied what was happening in North Korea. They said these human rights abuses were worse than almost anything they'd seen since World War II. 26 million people live under this system right now in 2025. The wildest part is while you've been watching this video, nothing has changed. Same darkness, same hunger, same fear. A country that was never supposed to exist just refuses to end. Drop your thoughts in the comments telling us which fact shocked you the most, because honestly, the mandatory poop quotas still blow my mind. North Korea was strange, but the Brits? They took it personally. Click here to watch it.